Dear friends and family, thank you so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate your presence here. My name is Krikor Maloyan. I'm a board member of the Armenian Council of America, and we're here, of course, with Congresswoman Judy Chu. I would like to first give you a brief description of the Armenian Council of America. We're a grassroots nonprofit organization that strives to advocate for the Armenian American community and for the local Los Angeles and Southern California communities. As a brief introduction, of course, Congresswoman Judy Chu does not need one, but I'll give one anyways. She has been a champion for the Armenian community for years, since first entering Congress in 2009. She currently represents the 27th District, and in her position, she has done truly so much for our community, and we really appreciate all of the efforts, all of the attention and the care that you give to our community and to our homeland, the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Artsakh. We really appreciate it. Please join me. So I think the best place to start is, of course, the passing of the recent House resolution regarding the recognition of the Armenian genocide. For those of you not aware, the House of Representatives passed a pretty landmark resolution with about 97% of Congress members voting in favor of this resolution. How was it in Washington during that time? And were there any challenges to getting this resolution passed?
Well, there have been challenges for decades. The resolution had been stopped so many times, it had not even been brought to the floor.
Right.
And a couple of Congresses ago, when it passed out of the Foreign Affairs Committee, we thought that we had gone so far, we felt so triumphant because Turkey had stopped this resolution at every level, at every twist and turn. And so we knew what a challenge it was. I know that I'd been a sponsor of this resolution every single Congress,
right.
And I was on the WHIP committee to try to get more votes to get on to be sponsors of the bill. But then there was that twist, and that twist was when Turkey was allowed to invade Syria and then put the Kurds in danger. That really angered so many members of Congress,
right.
Especially since Kurds had been our allies for all this time, that the tide turned just like that. And then, next thing you knew, we were able to put the bill on the floor. I will never forget making my speech on the floor. On the floor, I talked about having gone to the Armenian Genocide Museum when I was in Armenia and seeing all the displays of the mass marches, of the mass graves, of the children that had been killed in the terrible genocide at 1.5 million. Then I talked about meeting Joseph Bipo Manjikian.
Right.
Yeah, and how he was 104 when I met him. He'd since passed away, but I remember being so incredibly moved by his stories about the survivors of the genocide and what it was like to have his family wiped out like that. And so I said, in his name, I wanted to get this resolution passed. So that night, it was put on the floor, and the votes start going up.
Right.
And then the votes are so incredible, it goes over 400.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And then at the point at which it passed and the threshold, which was actually only 218 needed to pass, everybody just jumped up and down for joy. There was
on the floor.
Yes, absolutely. There was
That's incredible.
applause galore, and actually there were tears
Really?
all
That's
around because
incredible.
people knew how much work it took. It was a huge moment in history
Absolutely.
to have that happen.
Absolutely.
And then to have the Senate pass it only a couple of months later, and it was unanimous. So to have it passed unanimously in the Senate, you know what this means? Since they're resolutions, they do not have to be signed in by the president. So now you have both the House and the Senate having passed it. It is an official record. The U.S. is officially on record recognizing the Armenian genocide for what it was, a genocide. And that is a huge step forward.
The first time in American history.
That is right.
What an incredible achievement. Thank you so much. So you mentioned a visit to Armenia, and of course, we have a few pictures here going on in the background during your time there. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to Armenia? How did that kind of entire trip start?
I am so honored because in my congressional district, I have one of the largest and oldest Armenian populations in the nation. And so I'm very, very proud to have known so many and to be friends with so many who have urged me to go to Armenia.
Right.
Of course, over time, I've been involved with numerous issues, the double tax treaty with Armenia, the preservation of religious sites in Turkey, all kinds of things like that. But I just felt that it was time for me to go, and I was especially excited to go because I had an amendment in the National Defense Authorization Act, and it was about the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, of course.
Yes.
And it was about the fact that Artsakh, we know, has always been so terribly vulnerable, and that there needs to be measures to ensure that the people of Artsakh are safe.
Yeah.
And so gun locators, the removal of snipers, having greater observers, a greater number of observers there on the border to make sure that the border is safe between Artsakh and Azerbaijan. That was what I had in the amendment in the National Defense Authorization Act. Now let me tell you, that National Defense Authorization Act, we love having things in there because that's one of those must-pass bills. If you can successfully get that amendment in there and it makes it the whole way through, then your bill will go through. So, for the first time ever, we were able to get that amendment into the House version of the National Defense Authorization Act, and it passed off the floor, so I was very, very excited. That was in July, and that made me even more determined to go to Artsakh than ever.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you receive any lashback?
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course.
We all heard that you may be on a list somewhere in Azerbaijan, perhaps.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you went to Armenia first. That was your first stop, and you met with a number of Armenian leaders, Prime Minister Pashinyan. You met with the Judicial Council. You met with the Foreign Minister. What was your impression of Armenia, the atmosphere there, post-revolution? How did you find it?
I was so excited to see all of these young people, all these new people, and the dreams that they had for stamping out corruption. This was a true velvet revolution. And I had many deep discussions with them. I was able to go with Congressmember Jackie Speier.
Right.
And so the both of us met with numerous members of the parliament and the cabinet. I tell you, the parliament, 90% of them have never been in any parliament before.
Yeah.
They were so completely new and fresh. They described their election. I mean, their elections took place within a span of, weeks. like they just decided, hey, I'm gonna run, and they just walked around the blocks, and there they were, and then they got, well, anyway, what I came to learn is that they are very, very bright. I mean, these are very well-intentioned, very bright people who are thinking very, very deeply about how to restructure our media so that it can be free of corruption, so that they can have a functioning parliament and that they can have functioning laws that are passed that can really and truly benefit the people. So I was very impressed with that. We did indeed get to meet the Prime Minister Pashinyan, and as well as the President, and the First Lady.
And the First Lady.
Who, by the way, is very, very intelligent.
Right.
She's very, very impressive.
We had an opportunity to meet with her when she was here.
Yeah, that's right. When she
Fantastic.
had her, yeah, she is amazing. So the Prime Minister was also very impressive because of his desire, his hopes, and his vision to have a different kind of Armenia where there would be no corruption and indeed a great life that could be promised for the people. But I have to tell you something else, which is that I also met Kim Kardashian.
You did? In Armenia?
I met her because she was meeting with the Prime Minister. Yes, she was meeting with the Prime Minister.
That was a full calendar for the Prime Minister.
And it might be one of these pictures here. And she was coming out, and we were going in. So yes, she was there, and it was interesting because she did say to us that she was going to do everything she could to get the Armenian Genocide Resolution passed, because that was prior to it getting passed. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. So coming to U.S.-Armenia relations, let's segue into House Resolution 452. For those of you who don't know, House Resolution 452 is there to strengthen U.S.-Armenia ties and relations, and it essentially says that it congratulated the people of Armenia for that peaceful constitutional revolution and to try to shrug off the old way, the old corruption from the prior regime, and to help, and that the United States would help empower Armenia and its citizens for future progressive constitutional growth. Can we see more of that relation strengthening resolutions and U.S. aid from the government in 2020 and beyond?
I truly hope we can do that. First of all, I really hope we can pass House Resolution 452 pretty soon. We have 41 co-sponsors, so it's on its way, it's very good, but reaffirming the relationship between the U.S. and Armenia is very important, especially with the Velvet Revolution. And actually, we had quite a few discussions with the judiciary.
Yes.
In fact, because they are puzzling over how to restructure the judiciary, and indeed, that is really central to making sure that they have laws that are above and beyond that can stand the scrutiny, so that there cannot be corruption that takes place ever again.
Truly independent judiciary, really.
That's what they were striving for. So, actually, we said, could the U.S. be of assistance there? And they said yes, so we were hoping to create greater ties there so that there can be advice.
Fantastic, excellent. Yeah. And as far as, so let's probably move on to your trip to Artsakh. What I want to know first is, how did you get into Artsakh? Because I've heard stories of that helicopter ride. I assume you took the helicopter.
I took the helicopter ride.
How was the helicopter ride? Was it nerve-wracking? Was it fun? Exciting?
Well, I thought it was really interesting. I'd had heard about the helicopter ride. And I understand that Congressmember Jackie Spear had not gone the previous time because of the doubts that people had about going on the helicopter ride. But of course, I really wanted to go, so I said, yeah, we have to do this. So actually, they had members of the military there who were doing it. So I mean, they seemed like they were very authoritative and knew what they were doing. So they did give me confidence.
I've heard that the Armenian military is very adept in flying in those conditions and over the mountains. So they have a great deal of practice. I'm sure you could have trusted them throughout that flight. That's fantastic. So in Artsakh, I'm sure you met a number of individuals there in the leadership, the president, etc. How did you find Artsakh as opposed to, Armenia?
Okay, so I want to tell you that Azerbaijan was trying to scare me off. So
Right.
they have multiple visits to my office.
Oh,
Yeah,
lobbyists or
the diplomat.
the
The
representatives?
diplomats,
Okay.
yeah, for the consulates. Basically, they were saying, don't go. It's a place where there's potential violence. It is conflict-ridden, and you will ruin relations by going. So they painted this picture of this war-torn place that would be very unpleasant to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I went there, I was so shocked. It was such a beautiful countryside.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
The countryside there is absolutely gorgeous.
it's gorgeous. It's surrounded by the mountains and anyway, it kind of reminded me actually of the rural part of the south of France.
Nice.
Yeah, just a place where the life is slower
Yes.
and where people know each other one-on-one and where there isn't just a lot of interaction with the people, where you can really trust the people around you.
Absolutely.
And of course, meeting with the parliament, I could see how they really cared about Artsakh. And in fact, they took us to lunch, and the lunch had such incredibly fresh and delicious food. I said, I cannot believe it. Oh, and also, I discovered Artsakh wine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. How did you find it?
I was amazed.
Yeah.
It was so delicious.
And I'm sure, did you feel safe? Did you ever feel, that your safety?
Of course.
Of course.
Of course, totally safe, yes.
Absolutely. So,
I mean, we saw somebody getting married, there was a whole wedding party.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
We saw, people basically living their lives so
Yes.
beautifully. But the parliament members told me stories about how much in danger they are. And for instance, they said that the observers along the border only come once every 3 months.
right.
So what kind of observing is that?
Yeah.
You are not
Absolutely.
really preventing conflicts.
That's why there are tons of border skirmishes, ceasefire violations
Exactly.
along the border, which kind of brings me to some of the new proposals for removing a lot of the snipers and to increase the observer activity.
Yeah.
How can we move forward on making sure that both sides agree to those proposals, the Royce Engels proposals, and we try to promote a greater sense of responsibility for Azerbaijan to adhere to the ceasefire?
So I was so excited about getting my amendment into the National Defense Authorization Act. But then what you have is the Senate version and the House version. Then they go into a conference committee and they work out which things will remain in there. So I fought to have my amendment remain in there, but Azerbaijan came in too heavily.
Of course.
And yeah, they got it removed.
Of course.
So they.
But we have hope for the future.
Well, I
Absolutely.
thought it sent a very strong message that it got that far and that it got
Definitely.
that much support.
Definitely.
So I think we just have to continue to push for that. It's such a sensible solution, and we have to continue to do it, whether it is through the NDAA or through diplomatic means.
Yeah.
We have to push for conflict resolution along that border.
Right. Absolutely. I completely agree. Speaking of that border, tell us about your experience with HALO. Tell us a little bit about what HALO is and their demining project, for those of us here who don't know about it, and your visit there. I think that there were a few pictures there with, defused mines.
I was also so amazed by that. I was just struck by the fact that there were so many mines left in that area, and that zone had the highest casualty rate, the civilian casualty rate
Yeah.
in the world at one time.
Right.
And then I was really amazed at the dedication of these workers. They recruit workers from all around the world to go right to where those mines are and to defuse them. Can you imagine what treacherous and risky work that is?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's just like that.
Yeah.
So they showed us how they do it. And this woman here, by the way, was the fastest deminer.
Deminer, no way.
She was the fastest, yeah.
That's incredible.
And this is the Armenian Genocide Museum and Monument. Okay, one of the highest accident rates in the world from the civilian, these are the civilian accidents from the mines.
Yeah.
And this is the HALO project.
That's fantastic.
But somewhere along the way you'll see they actually have a display of the mines, and they show all the different types of mines. Some of the mines are really little ones, and they are really treacherous because they blow off the limbs of the kids. I mean, they're all over the place, and sometimes not easy to find. And then there are the super gigantic ones, which could, blow up a whole house.
Right. Yeah.
So having the kind of skill to be able to demine is really a precious thing, and that's why I thought we had to do whatever we could to make sure that HALO completes its project. But here's the thing. They had a deadline of January 31st to use the $500,000 that they were granted in this past period to complete the job. And so we were really alarmed because what they have come to discover is that there are more and more mines.
Of course.
And they had ways to go to demine the area. And so I was so alarmed that when we came back, Jackie Spear and I met with USAID, the head administrator, to say, please, they need more resources to finish the job. And in reality, what they need is a survey, a resurvey basically, to really look at how much more they would truly need to demine the entire area.
Wow. Right.
Well, we went back and forth, but I have to say that just today I got the message that they are at least extending the period so that instead of the money ending on January 31st, it will go to the end of March.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so
Thank you so much for that. That's fantastic.
And they're going to have a meeting in DC in the next couple of weeks, the CEO of HALO
Yes.
and the USAID, so that they can talk about this whole issue of the rest of the mines.
Yeah, and increasing the funding, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
We really appreciate your support on the demining efforts, because we know that we hear that, every so often that a child or a farmer out closer to the border gets hit with a mine, and it's absolutely devastating for the family and the community, really, because the entire community bands together to assist if someone's injured or disabled. And so when you kind of take one person out of that equation, the entire community does suffer. So we really appreciate your efforts on that. Thank you so much. So speaking about Armenia and Artsakh, was there anything in particular that stuck out to you? I'm sure that you visited a number of our cultural sites. Was there any one particular thing that kind of stood out to you that you felt that it was part of our cultural heritage and that you could share with us today?
Well, it was so moving to go to the Armenian Genocide Museum and to see the whole complex. First of all, the monument, which you can see from so far away, but also to walk around and see these different trees. And the trees were planted as each country declared that the Armenian genocide was indeed a genocide. So it was, I looked at each of these signs to see which countries had done that. And there were a lot of countries.
Yeah.
And it was a shame that the U.S. at that point had not had a tree. And then, of course, we went to the memorial itself and we laid a wreath. And it was very moving to be able to do that right in the heart of Armenia.
Yeah, absolutely. The monument is so imposing.
Oh.
Especially when you reach the immortal flame, you're surrounded by the monument. It's very imposing.
And then in the museum, I saw the maps of where Armenians had to march. And
The distance.
the distance was
Absolutely.
unbelievable, with no food, no water,
Right.
just forced and to go on these marches where people just died and dropped along the way.
I can probably tell you a portion of the survivors from the Near East relief efforts in the United States government at the time and their aid efforts are probably sitting in this room today. And it is thanks to the efforts of the United States government and the Near East Relief Fund that really helped us survive through that march. And at the very least assisted in providing and protecting for those orphans from the massacres. And so we really do thank all of your efforts that you have done in the past, and of course the efforts on behalf of the United States government during our great tragedy. But more importantly, moving forward, keeping our eyes always to the future, we're really excited and encouraged to hear that we are strengthening our relationship with the United States, and more importantly, that the United States is encouraged to be active and to assist in Armenia and its new era of perhaps constitutionalism. On that token, is there anything that we can do to help you, to help other congressmen and women, of course, in assisting Armenia and to provide more maybe USAID or provide just more aid in general to Armenia?
Well, it's so important to have a voice on Capitol Hill and to have events with the Armenian caucus. Fortunately, we do have an active Armenian caucus, and every time there is the commemoration of the Armenian genocide, quite a few members do show up. But making sure that your voice is heard on all the different issues. I mean, there's so many issues still to work on, whether it is increased aid or whether it's, something I've been involved with is a double tax treaty, so that businesses who are doing business both in Armenia and the U.S. aren't double taxed. So, other countries have that. Why doesn't Armenia? So that's another thing. Having trade deals, of course, could help. Dealing with the issues of the religious sites in Turkey.
Yes, absolutely.
It takes constant education. And so having your voice there to tell us what the key issues are at any point in time is very, very important.
Absolutely, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman. We really appreciate your time here. And let's all give her a round of applause. I think we're going to open it up to some Q&A from the audience.
Okay.
If we can maybe get a microphone passed around. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the Congresswoman?
Maybe this one's in the book, so maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good evening. Currently, the Russian Federation is supplying arms to both Azerbaijani and the Armenian side. Is the U.S. government also doing the same? Are they supplying arms to Azerbaijan?
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure. But there is definitely a close relationship between the U.S. and Azerbaijan, and that's why we are having trouble with such things as my amendment to the NDAA. So I find it very, very disturbing. And I will check into that for you.
But also more importantly, I think the Azerbaijani lobby and the Azerbaijani government is a lot more stronger in the United States because of Armenia's past. The Republic of Armenia has not been as present in DC, and I think that you'll start to see that change moving forward. I think that you're going to see the Republic of Armenia be a lot more present and active in DC. I mean, we've just seen that recently, that, you know, the Republic has been a lot more present in the face of representatives and senators and all levels of the executive branch. So hopefully we'll see some more change in that direction.
I would really appreciate that because the Azerbaijan lobby has quite a bit of money, and I can see that influence all over the place.
Of course,
Yeah.
and I think that we see the same, of course, with the Republic of Turkey. But of course,
Exactly.
that obviously doesn't spill over into the Artsakh issue, but still, the idea of the complete lack of respect for any of the historical sites in Eastern Turkey is very present in that
Yeah.
sphere. Do we have any other questions? Right here.
In the event of unfortunate war breaks out again in Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan in between, what is the U.S. role would be in your mind? What can we do as American government to help the situation?
We have to apply full pressure to reduce the tensions, and clearly we have to use every diplomatic means possible to de-escalate. So it's very, very important to make sure that Azerbaijan does not increase its aggression towards Artsakh and that tensions are reduced so people can be safe.
In the event, if it goes worst and we are fighting big time in there, what can we do? What the American government will do? Are they going to interfere to stop it, sending armed forces or something?
Well, I think the first method would always be diplomatic forces, using diplomatic means by which to reduce these tensions and to see if there can be a dialogue and a ceasefire, of course, so that there can be a stop in the action and hopefully a permanent stop.
I think we saw some of that with Secretary Clinton's role with the OSCE Minsk group in trying to achieve a ceasefire a few years back during the Obama administration. And I think that you would see something similar. Of course, diplomatically would be the premier choice. Yeah, absolutely.
My problem is they're not respecting. They're always aggressively coming toward us and killing our young men for no reason.
That's exactly
Well,
where
that's
the
why, yeah.
Congresswoman's amendment
Yeah.
would come into play. So if we provide a lot more support to Congress members, if the Republic of Armenia provides a lot more support to the Congress members in that particular role, that they can, you know, have amendments in United States resolutions or bills, that they can then, the United States government would then be empowered to assist with assisting the ceasefire and a reduction of snipers and a reduction of heavy artillery on the border and the demining process and all of that.
So, yeah, and that would call into question an even greater need for these, the amendment that I introduced. So who knows, if there was such a conflict, maybe that will come out of it, because that would be a way of monitoring the border in a more solid way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your talk.
Do you think that border monitors should be positioned in Artsakh permanently, or is there you know, an idea floating around in DC of what the ideal scenario would be in order to assist the ceasefire violations?
Well, definitely has to be more than every 3 months.
Of course, absolutely.
I mean, I was surprised that there wasn't a constant presence on there.
Yeah, and I think that the same can be said for most of the conflict zones around the country. I mean, around the world. whether it's in Ukraine or in Georgia. I mean, I feel like in most conflict zones do not get the attention that they deserve
Yeah.
in order to resolve these situations with diplomatic means. Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Going back to the question about the Azeri army being supplied, there was a Section 907 Freedom Support Act, but it was waived somehow. That prohibited U.S. government assisting Azerbaijan militarily. But I think it was waived recently. That's why there's a loophole there that maybe they can use it to get arms. So maybe that's what you should
I
do
see,
there.
okay, we will look into that, and then I think we should try to have resolutions where they cannot sell those arms. Or supply them with the arms.
As far as I remember, most previous Secretary of States visited Armenia since the independence, Republican and Democrats. And I have a feeling that current administration and Secretary of State is not involved with the situation in the Caucasus region, and I don't see any plans to visit Armenia. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I sure hope it isn't because of undue influence of Azerbaijan, but I don't know. Yeah, it is very unfortunate, and they should be engaged. They need to be engaged. It's their responsibility to be engaged. Would it have possibly been before because of their relationship with Turkey? Now that has kind of fallen apart there. So, so would now be the time for them to finally do what they should be doing, which is to visit Armenia.
Okay, I have one more question. Are we allowed to speak about local politics or?
Before that, I just want to chime in. So if you want the current administration to do something different, you can vote this November. Go out and vote, and maybe you'll see some of the change that you want.
With the impeachment trial going on, and we're all following as much as we can, but we don't see much change in the public opinion. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I believe that we have become very polarized on this, and Trump has consolidated his base to believe a certain thing around what he did. But I believe right now the presentations that are being given by our House impeachment managers are laying out the stories from beginning to end. I hope that you are listening to them because it's done in a very coherent way with videos and pictures and snippets and quotes, and then you can understand this whole picture of what really went on. And I just truly feel that I hope the American people do come to understand that nobody is above the law, including the president, and that you cannot have a situation where you undermine our national security for your own personal political purposes. So that is a message that we are trying to get through, and I believe that our House impeachment managers are doing a very good job. They are being very rational and presenting all the evidence that they can. I do believe that there has been an overwhelming polling, though, 69%, that people, the American people, want witnesses and documents.
Yeah.
Did you know that this is the first impeachment trial that has had no witnesses or documents?
Mm-hmm.
How can you have a trial without any of those things? And so at least we know that the vast majority of American people feel that a trial should be fair. And I think that's progress, that's movement forward.
Absolutely. So with that, we're going to conclude our Q&A session for tonight.
Could I do something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I actually have my staff here, and we are very, very eager to have a very good relationship with the Armenian American community. And so I just wanted to introduce them to you because they're each in charge of different things.
We'd love that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so Becky Chang, my Deputy Chief of Staff. And Enrique Robles, my District Director. Oh, just to say, he's in charge of Veterans Affairs and the Environment, Small Business, Science and Technology.
Great.
Miley Plan, in fact, why don't you guys come forward so they can see you? Okay, Miley Plan is in charge of health, children, and family and seniors. Now, Cindy Lee is our field representative and caseworker. She's in charge of education. And youth and homelessness and the census. And by the way, everybody's going to fill out their census form, aren't they?
Yes.
And by the way, I say caseworker because guess what? If you have any problem with any federal program or even any program, you can come to our office and they will open up a case and they will work on that, whether it's Medicare, Social Security, Veterans Affairs, any of these things. We are there to help you.
Excellent.
And yeah. And Lauren Jacobs, she's also a caseworker who works on these issues and does such a good job on casework and making sure that people's issues are taken. Oh, and by the way, visas, right? Passports.
I was going to mention USCIS and State Department.
USCIS, many times we do inquiries with USCIS and help people on those issues. And then Jonathan Horton, he's my staff assistant. And here's something, one of his areas is USPS, because you know what, you'd be surprised how many people have problems with their mail. Right? So think of all those issues. Many times people do have to come to us for help, and I want to make sure you know we are here for you.
We really appreciate that. Thank you so much.